Welcome everyone from around the world for this inspired and exciting event that was both of these guys said yes to. I'm so happy, and it's so timely to have a conversation with Rupert and Swami Ji. And I want to thank you all for being here for our first session of Awake in Stillness Conference, The End of Dreaming. This is the title and theme that was inspired by a poem by Helen Schuckman in The Gifts of God. And it became the theme that we use to invite our conference teachers and speakers. And we're so happy to have all of you here. And we're excited to introduce our first teachers, presenters, and both authors and well-known leaders in the understanding of Advaita Vedanta, among many other traditions, and a vast amount of wisdom comes with these two men. So, without further ado, I'll introduce our speakers and ask them their first question. Rupert Spira teaches a non-dual approach to spirituality, rooted primarily in the teachings of Advaita Vedanta, the direct path, and influenced by perennial philosophy. Rupert's approach is also informed by the teaching of Kashmir Shaivism, Sufism, and the teachings of the Christian mystics. His core teaching revolves around the nature of awareness and consciousness, emphasizing that one's true identity is not the body, mind, or personality, but pure infinite awareness. From an early age, Rupert was deeply interested in the nature of reality and the source of lasting peace and happiness. After spending 20 years immersed in the teachings of classical Advaita Vedanta, he met his teacher, Francis Lucille, who introduced him to the direct path approach, whereby one may recognize the source of peace and happiness in one's self. Rupert has written several books and holds regular meetings and retreats online, as well as in Europe and the United States. He is also a noted potter trained in the British Studio Pottery School with work in public and private collections. Thank you, Rupert, for accepting this invitation to be here.
Thank you, Bill, for inviting me, and pleasure to be here.
Swami Sarvapriyananda also is known as Swami Ji or Swami. He teaches a spiritual philosophy also rooted in Advaita Vedanta, a non-dualistic tradition within Hindu philosophy. As minister of the Vedanta Society of New York since 2017, Swamiji provides a contemporary approach to the ancient teachings of the great Advaita masters like Adi Shankara, and as a monk of the Ramakrishna order, Swami Sarvapriyananda is greatly influenced by the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, as well as from classical texts like the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Brahma Sutras, and others. He joined the Ramakrishna Math in 1994 and received sannyasa in 2004. He has served in various capacities within the Ramakrishna mission, including as an acharya at Belur Math as assistant minister in Southern California. Thank you, Swami Ji, for accepting this invitation to be here.
Thank you for having me, Bill. Great to be here with you, Rupert, and everybody else.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, let's get started. The first question that I have for the both of you is, could you both summarize in 3 or 4 sentences the most important points from your teaching? And whoever wants to go first.
Rupert.
Let me summarize it in 2 ways, Bill. One very practical, one a little more philosophical. Peace and happiness are the nature of our being, and we share our being with everyone and everything. And a second formulation which says exactly the same thing in different terms would be there is a single, infinite and indivisible reality whose nature is being, consciousness, spirit, love, from which everyone and everything derive their apparently independent existence. So those would be 2 formulations that really say the same thing in slightly different ways of the essence of not only what I speak and write about, but I would suggest what the great spiritual traditions, or all the traditions, essentially say.
Thank you. Swami?
I'll also present it in 2 ways. One, the classical formulation from Advaita Vedanta, the Advaita Vedanta tradition, and the same thing again from Swami Vivekananda. Advaita Vedanta has the advantage of, you can express it very elegantly and succinctly. So in a formulation attributed to Adi Shankaracharya, the teachings of Advaita Vedanta would be, in Sanskrit, Brahma Satyam, Brahman is real. Jagat Mithya, the world is an appearance. Jiva Brahmeva Napara, the individual sentient being, you or I, anybody, we are that Brahman and nothing else. Or you could make it even shorter. From the Upanishads, there are these sentences which summarize the entire teaching. Very famously, that you are, Tat Tvamasi, from the Chandogya Upanishad, or Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, from the Vedantic Upanishad, and a number of other such statements. You can make it even shorter, just Om. That tells you all of the teaching, but you have to unpack it. And you can make it even shorter. Advaita says the best teaching is in silence, but I promise not to use the best teaching here. I'll speak. Swami Vivekananda's formulation of the same thing was, each soul is potentially divine, and the goal of spiritual life is to manifest this divinity already within us. Or he put it in another way. He said, my mission in life is to teach unto humanity their inner divinity and how to manifest it in every movement of life. He summarized Vedanta as saying that our inner reality is divine, our true nature, and we are all one existence. Yeah.
Thank you. So, from the perspective of the direct path, how do each of you interpret the so-called process of awakening in stillness and the idea of remembering your dreaming?
Do you want to go first, Swamiji?
Okay. In Advaita Vedanta, the spiritual journey is a journey from ignorance to knowledge, from not knowing to knowing, or from not realizing to realizing. So you can distinguish this from, say, a journey in space or time. It's not about going from here to some heaven or not waiting from now to something will happen in the future. Maybe God will come again as an avatar, or maybe the millennium will come, or maybe I will get some extraordinary experience and then I will attain to this promised spiritual reality. It's right here, right now. If it's right here that we are Brahman, we are the limitless awareness existence, this one existence, which is the reality of this entire universe, we are already that. Then the question arises, if we are already that, why don't we seem to experience it? Why don't we see, doesn't it seem to be real? It just seems to be words. And the answer would be ignorance. We are not aware of it. We have not been introduced to it. And in spiritual life, in the Vedantic path, we have to move from not knowing, not realizing, not seeing it, to knowing it, realizing it, seeing it, and beyond that, to living it. So it is, the theme is very beautifully put, dreaming. It is awakening from the dream. And awakening from the dream is awakening from ignorance to knowledge. When we use the dream metaphor, one has to be careful, as one has to be with all examples. Examples, metaphors, analogies are very powerful in the spiritual path, but they also require a skillful teacher to see what is being said and what is not being said. So when we wake up from a dream, our usual dreams at night, when we sleep and we dream, we wake up, we go from a dream state to a waking state. The whole state changes. The dream world disappears. The people and the actions and whatever's going on in the dream world, that all just disappears. And you sit up on the bed and say, oh, I was dreaming. Whereas in enlightenment, in the Advaita enlightenment, this world doesn't disappear. One has to be very careful here. This is where language fails, basically. You still see the same thing. You still see the same people. You still have you experience the body, the mind. But as Vivekananda said, it's not that Vedanta dismisses the world. For the first time, we understand what it truly is. So this is the awakening from the dream. It's not going from one state to another state, but you realize what is the truth of all of these states. Whatever is here in the waking is also in the dream, is also in the deep sleep. There is one reality shining forth as various kinds of states. I mean, I love the gold and ornaments metaphor, where ornaments, you can have the same gold, you can make it into a necklace, and then you melt it down, you make it into a bracelet or a ring. Now the name has changed, the form has changed, the use has changed also. But it's literally the same reality, the same gold, which is appearing and being called, appearing in different ways and being called by different names. The universe is just like that. There is this one fundamental reality, which is being, which is awareness, and which is limitless, which appears as the subject and the object, which appears as all our various experiences, or appears as the absence, which is also a kind of experience in deep sleep or anesthesia or whatever. And that reality we are. That's our real reality, so to say. This is the awakening from the dream. I would also like to add that the Upanishads use this metaphor of awakening from the dream. If they say, arise, awake, go to the enlightened ones and learn from them the truth about yourself. It's a very famous quote from the Upanishads.
Thank you. Does Swami Ji, does stillness have a place in this experience?
Yes. Where to start? Let's start at the heart of it all. Stillness is the reality. And that stillness is a stillness which cannot be disturbed. It never becomes restless. It's always there. It's undisturbed. It cannot be disturbed. It's at the heart of all reality. It exists right now. Even in the midst of apparent restlessness, apparent turmoil, like the eye of the hurricane, it's always still. Atman, Brahman, pure consciousness, primordial ground of being, if the Buddhists would say, whatever you call it, it is still. The Upanishads, the Mandukya Upanishad, for example, calls the ultimate reality stillness, Shantam. It's not peaceful, it is peace itself. And it is, in the biblical language, it's the peace that passeth understanding. So it's that stillness is always there. And that's the nature of ultimate reality, and it's our own nature. We are that stillness. And stillness also forms a part of spiritual practice. We need, there it is something to be done or cultivated. And it is very helpful in two ways. The stillness in spiritual practice is helpful in two ways. One is, it helps us towards enlightenment. So still in body. You need to be still in body for meditation, for example. And still in the speech. And still in the mind. So stillness at the body, verbal, mental level. Then only meditation is possible. This stillness, you can also expand it further. You know, if you want to take a deep dive into it, look at ethics or morality. In one sense, you can understand ethics or morality as stillness. What I mean by this, let me expand a little bit. There's this quote I read, which is beautiful, which says, one can fall down in 100 ways, but one can stand straight in only one way. One can be dishonest in 100 ways, 1,000 ways, but the truth is one. You can see the truth as the stillness of all dishonesty. One can see self-control as the stillness of the 1,000 different ways of indulging and dissipation. One can see, for example, frugality as the stillness of the multifarious tendencies to accumulate. One can see non-violence as the stillness of the 100-fold, 1,000-fold impulse to violence. So ethics also can be seen as stillness. So this stillness at the ethical level, the stillness at the physical, verbal, mental level, emotional level, this is all very useful in attaining to that capital S stillness, which is our real nature. And afterwards, when we realize our real nature, that we are Atman, Brahman, whatever you call it, then to manifest it, to live that realization, stillness is again useful. I'll leave it at that. We can expand later.
Thank you. Rupert, should I restate the question or?
Please do. Thank you.
Okay. From the perspective of the direct path, Vedanta, how do you interpret the so-called process of awakening, of awake in stillness, and the idea of remembering that you're dreaming?
Everything we experience through the finite mind. That is, through the faculties of thinking and perceiving. And the faculties of thinking and perceiving refract the unity of being, reality, and make it appear as many things. Therefore, it is not possible to approach reality through the finite mind, because everything we know through the finite mind appears in accordance with its limitations. And therefore, on the direct path, in recognition of this, the very first thing we are asked to do, and in fact this is also true of many spiritual traditions, the first thing we are asked to do is to turn our attention away from the content of experience. Content of experience, thoughts, images, feelings, sensations, perceptions, and so on. So as a first step on the direct path, one is asked to turn one's attention away from the content of experience, and this could be initiated by a question such as, what is it that knows or is aware of your experience? This question takes our attention away from what we are aware of, that is the content of experience, and it draws our attention inwards, towards the fact of being, or being aware, or awareness itself. And this is the first, we could call it the first great recognition, that I am essentially nothing that I am aware of, I am that which is aware. This is not yet the recognition that is traditionally referred to as awakening or enlightenment, but it is an important step on the way. The second question, having established what I essentially am is the fact of being aware, or awareness itself. The second question is, what is the nature of the awareness that I am? And this requires some further investigation. I won't go into the details now. I'm just giving you a broad outline of the path to awakening on the direct path in response to your question. So this second question, what is the nature of the awareness that I essentially am? It is inherently peaceful, a peace that does not depend on what is or is not taking place in the content, in our experience. As Swamiji said, the peace that passeth the understanding. It is it is full, lacking nothing, needing nothing. And in common parlance, this plenitude, this self-sufficiency is what we refer to when we speak of happiness or quiet joy. So the nature of the awareness that I essentially am is inherently peaceful, unconditionally fulfilled, not fulfilled by something that is taking place in our experience, fulfilled, inherently fulfilled prior to experience. It is loving, and by loving I define love in this context as the felt recognition of our shared being. In other words, we experience love when we feel that the being that I essentially am and the being that you essentially are the same being, one being. So it is inherently loving. In other words, that the awareness that with which each of us is now currently aware of this conversation, it is the same awareness. And I would go even further to suggest that awareness is not just shared by all beings, people and animals, but all things, that the ultimate reality of not just everyone, but everything is the same shared being, shared awareness. Just two more comments about the nature of awareness that is recognized in this investigation on the direct path. It is ever present. The content of experience are always coming, changing and disappearing, but awareness is ever present or eternal, and it is without limits or infinite. And finally, it is self-luminous. It is aware of itself, in the same way that the sun illuminates itself just by being itself. So awareness knows itself just by being itself. So these, if we can call them qualities, these could be said to be the qualities of awareness. And it is this recognition, not only that I am essentially awareness, but the recognition of the nature of awareness that is traditionally referred to as awakening. And then the last step, which is really an endless step that really never comes to an end, is to live the implications of this recognition in all aspects of our life, our internal experience, thoughts and feelings, and our external experience, that is activities, perceptions and relationships. And that is what is traditionally referred to as waking up. Why is it called waking up? Because sense perceptions, as I suggested earlier, they make what is one appear as many. So the English poet William Wordsworth said, "Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting." What did he mean by this? He meant that as we're born, he didn't really mean born into the body, he meant born into experience. When experience begins, that is thinking and perceiving, we overlook our true nature of infinite being. Infinite being appears to us, refracted through perception, as 10,000 things. So what we consider to be being born or waking up is in fact a kind of falling asleep to the reality and waking up to an appearance. So that is why it is this waking state is referred to traditionally as a waking dream, a dream of sense perception. So the direct path, and indeed all paths in one way or another, are really involve overriding the apparent evidence of sense perception. Sense perception used to tell us the earth was flat. Sense perception used to tell us the sun went round the earth. Sense perception now tells us that reality consists of many things ultimately made of mind and matter. This is what the senses tell us. So that this great recognition that is referred to as awakening is really the seeing through the apparent evidence of sense perception, the illusion of sense perception, to the one reality that lies behind it and indeed appears as it.
Thank you. And Swami, would you have anything you would like to add to anything that Rupert just offered before we move to another question?
Oh, where do I start? Just some footnotes on what Rupert said. So the two fundamental steps of awakening, which Rupert mentioned. First is absolutely crucial. A change, a whole paradigm change in what we think of ourselves as. Right now, we think of ourselves as this body, mind, personality. And as Rupert said, when attention is drawn to our experience, we see that experience is happening in awareness, in consciousness, if you will. And when I recognize, I am essentially awareness. I'm essentially consciousness, not a body with consciousness, but consciousness in which a body, mind, personality appears as the world also appears. So that's the first step and absolutely essential to awakening. And then he went on to say that you appreciate the nature of this awareness. So then you start getting the benefit of it. So I am awareness, but what is this awareness like? Awareness doesn't become sick. Awareness does not age. Awareness is not hurt or cut, or as the Gita says, it can't be cut, it can't be drowned, it can't be suffocated, whatever. So awareness is always there. Then awareness does not get hungry or thirsty or it doesn't starve. Awareness does not get depressed or angry. Those are in the mind. So what is in the body mind? That's in the body mind. And awareness is free of those problems. So I, as awareness, am free of those problems. It's a huge load of our minds. It's like not just a dream, it's like a nightmare dissipating suddenly. So appreciating the nature of awareness. One further step, one more step, like an addendum or like a footnote to this. What about the things which we are aware of? So I am awareness, and awareness is this wonderful problem-free thing. Great. What about the things which we are aware of, which we have distinguished ourselves from? The tables and chairs and bodies and even thoughts. So there a huge question comes up. Are they something external which we are beyond awareness, which we are becoming aware of? Our common intuitive understanding of the world is that I am this person, and the whole world is outside me, outside this skin. It's an external world separate from me, which I interact with. Now, that's because of our body-bound sense of self. But when I realize that I'm awareness, then we are invited to consider what these things are. What's this table and the chair? Is it really outside awareness? What would it even mean to be outside awareness? Where are the margins, the borders of awareness? So then we begin to realize, Advaita introduces us to this amazing fact: the world is actually not outside awareness. The world is inside awareness. Even space itself is something that appears in awareness. One good way of understanding this is our dreams. In our dreams, we appear to inhabit a space. Maybe we are walking around somewhere, enjoying a garden, meeting people, and there's a sky and the earth and the river. And when we wake up, we realize all that space in the dream and all those people and the sky and the river and whatever and the garden, everything was in the dreaming mind. So space itself is an appearance in awareness, and therefore awareness is not limited by space. This is in traditional texts, it's formulated as, expressed as, awareness is all pervasive. So when we read that, we shouldn't think that awareness is some kind of like a smoke or something which pervades a room. It's not like that. It's rather space itself appears in awareness, and therefore awareness pervades all of space and all of its contents. And then time itself is an appearance in awareness. In that sense, awareness is eternal. So the universe itself appears in awareness. There's no thing which we are aware of which is other than awareness. So we come to this remarkable discovery that not only am I awareness, but whatever I'm aware of, whoever I'm aware of, they are all this awareness appearing to itself as if different. There is no second thing other than awareness, which you are. And this is non-duality, no second. In Sanskrit, the word Advaita means no two. Appears to be two, appears to be billions of things, or as Rupert said, 10,000 things, but there is only one without a second, and that's awareness, and that is you. So this sort of answers the question, what is this universe? What is it that we are aware of? I think that'll do for now.
Thank you.
There are whole textbooks on this question. And as most of us, we know that multiple philosophies can be generated with this question. If you think that what we are aware of is an external, separate, independent universe, you come to a dualistic philosophy. For example, the ancient Sankhya philosophy of India. There is awareness and a material universe. But non-duality says the so-called material universe is nothing other than the awareness. The universe is nothing other than you.
Rupert, do you have something you want to add?
Yes, good. I'm not going to add anything to that. Of course, I agree with everything Swamiji says, but that's a lengthy. We could talk a great length of that, and I want to stick with your question. And one of our attendees very reasonably asked, why did Rupert leave out the essential term in the question, stillness? Well, that's a valid question. I did indeed leave that out. Why? Well, I thought I'd spoken for long enough, so I didn't want to monopolize the conversation. But it's a legitimate question because it was essential to your original question. So let me just say something briefly about that. Let's use the analogy of the screen and the image, as we are all now looking at a screen. Or let's use the analogy of the screen and a movie. Awareness is in the same relationship to experience as is a screen to a movie. So all there is to a movie is the screen. As Swamiji just said, all there is to reality, both our internal experience and our external experience of the world, is awareness. So awareness is the sole, infinite and indivisible reality from which everyone and everything derives its apparent existence. So, and the screen, the movie is the appearance, the world, as well as our internal experience of thoughts and feelings. And these are always moving, changing, just as the movie always moves and changes. But the screen, which is the sole reality of the movie, never itself moves. The appearance always moves, the screen never moves. So this absence of movement is the stillness that you refer to. The very nature of awareness is stillness. The nature of the mind is to alternate between movement and stillness. We all know that the mind can be still in a gap between two thoughts, for instance. But the stillness that is the nature of awareness is prior to and independent of the movement and temporary stillness of the mind. And this is what is referred to in the Sufi tradition when they speak of the passing away of existence and the passing away of that passing away. The extinction of extinction in some Sufi texts. The passing away of existence, that's the cessation of the mind, the cessation of thoughts and perceptions. No more experience, no world. This is what we experience in deep sleep. Experience comes to an end. That's the passing away of existence. But the stillness that is the nature of awareness is not just an absence of content. It is a presence that is prior to and independent of the content and the absence of content. So it is the stillness prior to the stillness of the mind. If you turn the movie off and close down all your programs, what you're left with is your screensaver. The screensaver is the absence. Let's imagine you have a blank screensaver, the pale blue screensaver that comes with an Apple Mac when you buy it. Let's imagine you turn all your programs off and you're left with a still blue screensaver. That is the absence of all your emails, images, and movies. But it is still not the pure screen by itself. So the pure screen is prior to all the programs, but also prior to the screensaver. So the stillness of the mind, or the absence of content, would be like the screensaver behind our thoughts and perceptions. And then the true stillness of awareness, the absence of absence, or the presence of awareness is still, silent, at rest. I'll just say one more thing in relation to that. Strictly speaking, it's very difficult to speak about these things because it's not really possible to say anything true about reality. If we wanted to speak the absolute truth, we would just remain silent. So to refer to awareness as still is only true in reference to the content of experience, which is always moving. So with reference to our moving thoughts and perceptions, it is true to say that awareness is still. However, if we were to ask awareness, what is your experience of yourself? Without reference to the content of experience, awareness, if it could speak, it would certainly not answer I am moving, but nor would it answer I am still, because there would be no experience present with which to contrast it. The very best awareness would say is I am. And it is for this reason that I am, if the absolute truth can be formulated, I am is the very highest formulation of the absolute truth, because it attempts to describe in words what is awareness's experience of itself, rather than the finite mind's attempt to describe awareness from its point of view.
Could I
Thank you. Go ahead, Swamiji.
speak to something else that Rupert mentioned, seeing through appearances? Because we are always dealing with appearances unless we are in deep sleep or anesthesia or coma or in samadhi, but we are dealing with appearances. And Vedanta would have us see through these appearances. It's like seeing through the movie, noticing that there is a screen all the time. I'm just reminded of a monk in the Himalayas, in the foothills of the Himalayas in Haridwar. Um, he was he was not well educated in modern science or medicine. So the first time he became aware of X-rays. You can take a picture of your bones and skeleton. He was so excited, and he looked at us and said, "Oh, monks, this is how your vision should be. As a non-dualist, as a monk, your vision should be like these X-rays. It should penetrate through the name and the form and the use and penetrate through to being itself, to awareness itself." And but it's a good example, the X-rays.
Can I say something?
Sure. Thank you.
In response,
go ahead. Yeah,
Swamiji. Yes, the Swamiji is referring to these two steps, seeing through and seeing as. So the first step, if we believe that the world that is presented to us by our sense perceptions is real as it appears to be, then we have to see through that appearance to the reality behind it. If we believe that the landscape we see in a movie is a real landscape, then we have to see through the landscape to the screen, or we turn the movie off in order to see the screen. That's the first step. Then, when we have realized, no, it's a screen that I'm looking at, or when, as Swamiji says, we have, as it were, seen through the appearance of the world to the one reality that lies behind it, then when we, so to speak, turn the movie back on again, when we return to our experience of the world, we no longer see it as an illusion. We no longer see the landscape in the movie as an illusion, because we've seen through the landscape to its reality. Now, when we look at the landscape again, it has lost its veiling power. The landscape in the movie that once seemed to veil the screen now shines as the screen. So at this stage, we don't see through the movie to the screen. We look at the movie again, but all we see is the screen. It's the same with our experience. We first X-ray the world, as it were. We see through the appearance to the one reality, and then we look at the appearance again. And when we come back to it in this way, it has lost its veiling power. The world which once seemed to veil its reality, infinite awareness, now shines as that very reality. And of course, it's what the Sufis say when they mean, wherever you look, there is the face of God, that there is the appearance of the one.
Yes, if I may respond to that, add to that actually.
Yes.
The traditional formulation of Advaita Vedanta as Brahman is real and the world is false, that sort of puts a seed of a kind of duality in our minds. The teaching that the world is an appearance, it's false, it's an illusion, is actually a methodological step. It's not a statement of a final position. So it's supposed to help us to realize that underlying all of this is one reality which shines forth as all of this, as Rupert just said. I'm reminded of one of the monks of our order asking this question to a very great monk, Swami Turiyananda, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. Is the world false? And his answer was, no, why should it be false? There is only truth. It's not that there is a true reality and there is some kind of an appearance separately from it. Once you realize the reality, as Rupert said, there is only that reality, a one without a second. Then you don't have to keep on harping on the world is false and you have to see through it and you have to get to the reality. That reality alone shines forth as these 10,000 things, yes.
Thank you. Thank you both. for this clear understanding. And I'm wondering, we have a few questions in the chat that we'll look at in a minute, but I'm wondering if we could experiment with a sadhana in this experience, where one of you or both of you might lead our audience in the experiment or the experience of looking and maybe seeing through an inquiry suggestion.
Do you?
Do you want to start, Swamiji?
Okay.
I'm happy to. Um, whichever you go first if you like.
Okay. um, like a guided look at this. Let me just
Yes.
mention
Yes.
couple of one point about sadhana. All this discussion, it reminds me of the ancient debate between the Advaita Vedantins and the yogins. The yogins were the practitioners of Patanjali yoga, and their idea is that you still the mind and the truth will reveal itself. Yoga is defined as stilling the movements of the mind. And if you still the movements of the mind, that's the second sutra in the Yoga Sutras. Yoga is stilling the movement of the mind. And the third sutra says, what happens if you still the movement of the mind? Because if you still the movements of the mind, the truth which lies beyond the mind becomes clear. And the fourth sutra says, if you do not still the mind, then the truth, your real nature, pure consciousness, is always mixed up with the movements of the mind. So this gives the yogic paradigm. The problem is movements of the mind, and the solution is to still the movements of the mind. Then you grasp that you are this never moving, ever still, ever shining consciousness. You are that. In Sanskrit, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is stilling the movements of the mind. Tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. The witness consciousness is then ascertained in its real nature when the mind is still. Vritti sarupya mitaratra, which means otherwise, the witness consciousness, you are mixed up with the movements of the mind. So this is one paradigm. And you can see it's essential to still the mind in this paradigm. Otherwise, you don't get to the truth. You don't make that breakthrough. Whereas the Advaitins, they dispute it. They say that the sadhana, the spiritual practice, if there is a spiritual practice, then it's not sitting quietly. It is rather an inquiry into our own experience. That is the non-dual path. We immediately recognize it from the direct path. So there is this old dispute. The Advaitins charge the yogis with just sitting quietly. What's the point of sitting quietly? You have to remove ignorance. You have to generate knowledge, insight. That removes your ignorance about your real nature. The problem is ignorance and the solution is knowledge. And the yogins say the problem is restlessness of the mind and the solution is stilling the mind. In practice, if you see the spiritual practitioners in India, I've seen the monks, traditional monks in the Himalayas, they combine both. They are Advaitins, non-dualists, but they also regularly practice meditation. It's stilling the mind is useful for a host of reasons. So if we want to do a practice right now, I can go to my favorite, which is the insight into the distinction between the seer and the seen, the Drigdrishya Viveka. This is a simple practice from a medieval non-dualist text called the discernment of the seer and the seen. So when we start off, we just start with the knowledge or with the understanding that what we see, in a very naive sense, what these eyes are seeing, it's distinct, it's separate from the eyes. So my eyes see the computer screen and they can see your faces there. And so that which I see here is distinct. My eyes are here and that is physically separate. We know the eyes cannot see anything unless they're at a little distance from the eyes. So the seer and the seen are two different entities. And this makes solid philosophical sense because in philosophy, we know self-reflexivity is not allowed. A thing cannot operate on itself. A knife cannot cut itself, for example. So the subject cannot be the object directly. Now we start in a very naive way. In Vedanta, like in all good teaching, the starting is from what is very obvious, and then you go step by step into something that is subtler and subtler and subtler. So 4 steps. The first step is, let us notice that what these eyes are seeing, the eyes are the seer, and what they are seeing, colors and shapes, they are distinct from the eyes. There are many colors and shapes which we see, but the eyes are the same. The seer is one, the seen are many. And the seen are continuously changing. Relatively, the eyes are not changing. They are more or less the same. So 3 insights. The seer and the seen are different. That's one. The seer and the seen is one, the seen are many. And the seer is relatively unchanging. The seen are continuously changing. Now let's go to step 2. When we consider the eyes themselves, we realize we are aware of the eyes. The mind is the seer, and the eyes and the rest of the body is the seen. What about the world? That still remains as the seen. Now, what were earlier the seer, the eyes, they become the seen. We are seen, quote unquote, seen. The mind is aware of the eyes. I'm aware my eyes are open. I am aware I can't see too well, or I'm aware my eyes are closed. The eyes are the object which is seen, and the mind is the seer. Again, we note the mind is distinct from the eyes. The mind, whatever it is not the eyes. So the seer is different from the seen. And I, the seer, I, the mind, am aware of the eyes. The mind is aware of many, many things. It's still the mind. Seer is one, the seen are many. And the mind relatively unchanging, in the sense mind changes into more mind. The world changes in various ways. So the seer is relatively unchanging, and the seen are changing. Now we get into something very interesting. We are aware of the mind itself. We are all aware. When we look inwardly, we are aware of thoughts. We are aware of emotional states. We are aware of memories. We are aware of understanding. We're aware of perceptions. All these thoughts, feelings, emotions, they're all coming into the mind. We are aware of judgments. All this is the mind. And we are aware of the mind. Now, if the seer and the seen are distinct, then I, the one which is aware of the mind, I am distinct from the mind. Just as the eyes are not the colors or shapes they see, similarly, I, the witness of the mind, am not the mind. I am not thoughts, I am not memories, I am not emotional states. In fact, I am not what is called a personality. This is a huge breakthrough, that what I took myself to be so far, unquestioningly, that whole personality, it's mind-based and body-based. It's based on memory and history, and it's all seen. I am the seer of the mind. I am the seer of the personality. That's step 3. And finally, step 4, that witness consciousness, our tendency is to, well, that's interesting. Can I experience that? Can I see that, quote unquote? That seer of the mind cannot be seen. It can never be objectified. You cannot make it an object to itself. It is always the seer, never the seen. So we come to that one that clearly it exists. And clearly that one is aware, or it is awareness. So this existence awareness, I am, and I'm aware of the mind, and through the mind, I'm aware of the senses and the body, and through the senses and the body, I'm aware of this so-called world. So this, we stay as that. And you notice the next step, of course, would be what Rupert described as the second state, the step of appreciating the nature of the seer of the mind-body world, this witness consciousness, the ultimate seer. And then we realize that it's not born, it does not die. That's the body. It does not get upset or excited. That's the mind. It does not even wake, dream, and sleep. That's the mind. So I am this ever-shining awareness. And this, I would urge us to, see it as a fact, not as a kind of teaching, not as a kind of theory, as Vedanta would say at every step. That's the beauty of Vedanta, at every step, you're just noting a fact. When I say my eyes see the world, it's a fact. It's not theory. It's not a particularly esoteric philosophy. It's just a fact. Stick with that. You know what the Americans would say, keep it real. So eyes are the seer, the world is seen. Yes, we say to ourselves, yes. The eyes are seen, the mind is the seer. Yes, I get that. And the mind is seen, I, whatever I am the seer of the mind. Yes. And then I definitely, the seer of the mind, I exist, I shine. And, you know, I'll just leave you with this very two powerful instructions. It's very simple, but powerful instructions which, you know, masters give us when we enter into Vedanta. One is what I just called, the Americans call, keep it real. The teacher, the Vedanta teacher, the monk said, when you ask a child, what's a nose? The child will not say the nose is the organ of respiration, organ of smell. The child will say, this is a nose. Be like a child. Whenever a teaching is given to you, seer and the seen, the three states of waking, dreaming, deep sleep, the 5 levels of the human personality, keep it real, like a nose. When you say this body, yeah, this is the body. When you say mind, yes, this is the mind. Keep it real. Then when we're careful about keeping it real, the path to enlightenment, path to the spiritual breakthrough it's very clear. Otherwise, what happens at some point, it becomes theoretical. So keep it real, keep it like the nose. Here is the nose. That's one instruction. The second instruction is, how do you get the benefit from this? One teacher said, a monk, keep things where they belong. Oh, monks, keep things where they belong. Now, keep things where they belong, which means old age, you know, wrinkles and the body slowing down. Where does it belong? Not in awareness. It belongs in the body. Misery, guilt, negativity, hatred, irritation. Where does it belong? Not in awareness, not in mid-awareness, in the mind. Keep things where they belong. Don't say, if somebody says, oh, I'm obese, I have to lose weight. I, the witness consciousness, cannot be obese. It's the body which is obese. So the problem is in the body. Problem is in the mind, in the emotions, in the personality, never in the witness consciousness. And yes, you can proceed to fix those problems as far as they can be fixed. But at no point, as you, the witness consciousness, they are not in you. Keep things where they belong. So knows and keep things where they belong. You'll see Vedanta works wonders.
Thank you, Swami.
Can I add to that, Bill?
Yes, thank you, Rupert.
I'm not going to respond to your question, Bill, because Swamiji has just taken us on a very nice path of self-inquiry. I just want to just comment and add something. So, Swamiji, you started by talking about the yogic path, sometimes referred to as the progressive path, where the purification or stilling of the mind is considered a prerequisite to the recognition of our true nature, and typical practices in this involve paying attention to a mantra or watching your breath, a flame, and so on. These practices are referred to as the progressive path, not in a derogatory sense in any way. These are beautiful practices, but they're considered to be progressive because we progress to our true nature, not directly, as in the approach that Swamiji just shared with us, the direct path approach, but we go to our true nature via an object, via a mantra, a flame, the breath, and so on. And then at some stage we ask ourselves, but what is it that is aware of the mantra? Or what is it that is aware of our breath? And we engage it in one way or another on the pathway that Swamiji has just led us on, the path of the direct, going directly from the content of our experience back to our true nature, sometimes called self-inquiry, atma vichara. And then there's a third path, which is very rarely spoken of. It was implicit in what you said, Swamiji. You touched on it briefly, but didn't elaborate it. So I'd like to just say something about that. We go from the progressive path to the direct path, and from the direct path to the pathless path, which is really the culmination of the direct path. Once we have stopped giving our attention to something objective, a mantra, the breath, the flame, and we have inverted our attention, so to speak, turned our attention around, traced our attention back to its source as pure awareness. Well, once we have done this a number of times, each time we take that pathway, it gets shorter and easier. We don't take so many steps all the way back until after some time, we don't just visit our true nature of awareness from time to time in meditation or when we're practicing self-inquiry. We begin to live there. It becomes our new identity. We feel that it's who we are, and from there there's no longer a pathway from ourself to ourself, and this is where the direct path turns into the pathless path, or when self-inquiry turns into self-abidance, where there is no longer an extroversion of the attention, there's no longer any introversion of the attention. We are simply being. It's a kind of non-practice, a sort of non-meditation, simply being. And I would suggest that simply being is really the culmination of all spiritual paths and practices. And it is in this context that Ramana Maharshi said, don't meditate, just be. Now, I just want to add to that. I don't mean to imply by this that Ramana Maharshi did not approve of meditating either on the progressive path or on the direct path. He did. He advocated it and explained it at great lengths. But there was one small part of his teaching which was just being. Once you know, by know I mean feel, understand, you are that one reality. You are infinite awareness that is the reality of all. Then there's really no path. There's just an ever deepening into that, an abidance, a sinking into that, remaining as that. And just one last thing to say about that. Why can we say that simply being is the highest path, or the culmination of all the paths? Because if we were to ask awareness, what is your experience of yourself? It would, if it could respond, it would respond, simply being. So awareness wouldn't say, I practice self-inquiry or mantra meditation or indeed anything else in order to be myself. That's what the mind does. It practices the progressive path or the direct path, and rightly so. But in awareness's experience of itself, it is just eternally being and knowing itself effortlessly. And therefore, when we are simply being, we are being the one infinite reality. In religious terms, when we are simply being, our being is God's being all alone.
Thank you. Thank you both for all of that. And it stirred up a few questions in the chat. I'd like to grab a couple questions from the chat. One is from Selena. It says, what happens when the pursuit of truth becomes a fixed identity within ourselves, making it difficult to distinguish truth from personal convictions?
Did you want me to respond to that?
Yeah, would you go, go ahead, Swamiji.
Okay, let me see if I've understood that. Let me divide it into two parts. What happens when the pursuit of truth becomes a part of your personal identity? If you say pursuit of truth becomes a part of your personal identity, well and good. As long as we see ourselves as pursuing the truth, seekers of the truth, seeker of enlightenment, a spiritual practitioner, it's good. It saves us from a lot of nonsense. See, long before enlightenment, before you become a Jivan Mukta, free while living, or a Buddha. Until that point, the identity that I'm a spiritual seeker, a spiritual practitioner, a seeker of truth, is a great, great protection, and it's always orients us in the right direction. It's good. It's really good for us. But probably that's not what you are asking. How do you, the second part of the questions was, how do we distinguish between our personal convictions and the truth? If that's the question, in Vedanta or in philosophy, in Indian philosophy, for example, the answer is pretty straightforward. Truth depends on pramanas, sources of knowledge, not on personal convictions, feelings, opinions. If my personal convictions, feelings, and opinions are in line with what the sources of knowledge refer to, what reveal to me. For example, the sources of knowledge, these eyes are revealing to me that there's a computer in this room. And my conviction is also that it's, yes, there's a computer in this room. It cannot be otherwise. But if my personal feeling is that, no, there's an elephant in the room, my eyes are not revealing that. And then I have to correct my opinion that there's an elephant in the room. If for some reason I believe there's an elephant in the room, I realize that there's no elephant, because if there were, my eyes would show that. What I'm saying is sort of not very clearly, is that knowledge is produced by sources of knowledge. It could be perceptual knowledge, it could be inferential knowledge. Sometimes it could be wrong, but truth comes from sources of knowledge. However, I'll end with this. It's the Advaitic truth, or the Vedantic truth, the non-dual truth, is prior to all of this. Once we begin to inquire into Vedanta, we begin to realize that the awareness, it is to me the awareness that all sources of knowledge operate and deliver their results. I as awareness certify, this is true, this is knowledge, that's an opinion, this is right, that's wrong, this is true, that's false. All of these come after awareness. First is awareness itself. No source of knowledge can either, let alone falsify, or they cannot falsify awareness, and they are not needed to prove awareness. In fact, it's awareness which powers all truth seeking, and even all opinions and all personal identities, whatever it is. Behind all of that is awareness, self-shining, which does not need any certification. I'm still not sure I got to the core of the question.
Can I pick up where?
Go ahead. Thank you, Rupert. Thank you, Swami.
If we want to say something that is absolutely true about ourselves, barring remaining silent, as we saw earlier, the statement "I am" is absolutely true. It's not relative to any finite experience. Everybody, without exception, all 8 billion of us, or all 8 trillion of us, if the animals could speak as well, everyone can say with absolute certainty, "I am." So the expression "I am" doesn't represent a personal opinion. It is not a personal statement. It's a statement simply that expresses the awareness of being. And the awareness of being is the one experience that we have that is not filtered through the finite mind, that is not filtered through thought and perception. In other words, it's absolutely true. It's not relative to the finite mind. If we add anything to the "I am," then it becomes a relative experience, a relative statement. If the statement "I am" represents awareness's experience of itself, then "I am this" or "I am that" would be a finite mind's view of itself. It's what the ego is, a qualification of the "I am." If you add anything to "I am," then that becomes ego, the separate self. So the question, I'm referring to sort of what I think is the essence of the question about becoming a spiritual personality. using one's spiritual practice or even one's spiritual understanding, incorporating one's spiritual understanding in one's ego, using spiritual life to enhance the ego, whereas, of course, its intention is the very opposite. So really, if we say, I am a teacher, I am a spiritual person, I understand such and such a tradition, all these statements qualify and therefore limit the I am, pure awareness, and they are ultimately egoic statements. They don't pertain to awareness itself. Anything that qualifies the I am limits the I am and is not therefore true, not absolutely true. And I think we may provisionally make such a statement about ourselves. I am a writer, or I am a father, or I am a... It's fine to make these provisional statements in response to our circumstances, but as long as we understand that they're only provisional statements relative to the circumstances in which we find ourselves, but none of them, even the I am a spiritual practitioner, I am a spiritual teacher, I am a student, all of these are ultimately egoic positions, although I, of course, completely understand agree with Swamiji that to be a spiritual seeker is, of course, a very good thing. But it's a more refined form of ego than is the conventional egoic position, and sooner or later it has to be abandoned. Even I am a student, I am a teacher, all these identifications have to be abandoned.
Nice. Yes, thank you. Thank you both. There's a statement and a question from Fifi. Please, very important, have an answer. When do you stop the searching and all practices? As the practices is to get something or somewhere, it's for achieve something, right? And truth, it's here and now. The realization that I am that here and now, that I'm already enlightened. Is it a decision or it's something that I have to wait to happen?
I'll respond very briefly to that first, and then Swamiji can elaborate. When does the need to stop, I think the essence of the question, when does the need to stop practicing occur? When that question no longer arises.
Okay.
But as long as that question arises, then the question implies that you are projecting enlightenment into the future. In other words, you do not yet feel that you are this one infinite, indivisible whole or reality, in which case the search is very important. Keep searching, keep seeking, keep inquiring. But when that question is brought to an end through understanding, then there's no answer to that question. It simply ceases to arise.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask both of you a question. How does life change after realization?
Should I go?
Go ahead.
You have to ask an enlightened person, of course,
Yes.
but yes. After realization, literally, you have realized. It's no longer, you're not seeking anymore. You have found it. It's an unmistakable fact. One sign of that is that realization, it will not go away. There are genuine mystical experiences which arise and disappear. and they can leave behind profound, wonderful memories, which will maybe the best experiences of our whole life, peak experiences. But that's not non-dual realization. If it arises and disappears, no matter how valuable it is not the non-dual realization. The non-dual realization is a realization about the fact that I am Brahman, I am this limitless awareness existence right now for all time. And therefore, when I come to that, it will never go away. It will always be available. It's not that I'll always keep thinking, I am awareness, I am awareness. It's, for example, my identity as Sarvapriyananda. I don't keep thinking about it all the time, that I am Sarvapriyananda. I'm not anxious about it, that it'll slip away somehow. I don't practice it. I don't do a Sarvapriyananda meditation 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening, just in case the Sarvapriyananda identity is fading away or getting rusty. No, I'm so confident about it. Although it's a name, it's a monastic name which was given to me just a few decades ago. So I'm so confident about that. And then just imagine our real nature, eternally so, that you are limitless being, limitless awareness. Once that becomes clear, it never goes away. You don't need any practice to maintain it. However, what will happen is the practices which were going on earlier as part of seeking enlightenment, now it could be that those practices continue in order to stabilize and deepen that enlightenment. Still, some doubts may remain in the mind. For example, yes, I have found it, but my life, the lived life, does not match my realization, you know. So I need to be centered in that. I need to express it, manifest it. Vivekananda's terms, manifesting the divinity within. So the practices continue. After some time, even those practices are not necessary. You are so comfortable in your skin, as you know, you are manifesting it effortlessly. So yes, that would be my answer.
Can I just add something briefly to that?
Yeah, thank you.
How does life change after this recognition? The first thing to say, I just want to be really sure that we understand by this recognition something very simple, nothing exotic. The words enlightenment, particularly enlightenment and awakening, they have accrued so much false meaning and misunderstanding over the years. I had this misunderstanding for many, many years, that enlightenment was an extraordinary, exotic, rare experience. And so by the term recognition, we're just referring to the recognition of our nature, the recognition of the nature of our being. There's nothing exotic about it. It's simple, just who we are at the deepest level. What changes when we have recognized this, that there is a gradual realignment of the entire content of our experience, our internal thoughts and feelings, and our external activities and really activities, perceptions, and relationships. And really, this realignment process really goes on forever. We can never say that it comes to an end. The implications of this recognition that peace and quiet joy are the nature of our being, and we share our being with everyone and everything, that the truth of this just impresses itself on us more and more deeply, the more deeply we sink into it. So there is, although the awareness itself never changes, there is an experience of deepening into its innate peace and quiet joy. And we find that fewer and fewer experiences retain the power to take us away from this peace and quiet joy. And likewise, our relationships become more loving. Most people love the people they like and don't love the people they dislike. But love has nothing to do with who we like and who we dislike. Liking and disliking is a natural quality of the mind. but it has nothing to do with love, which is the nature of awareness. We share our being with everybody. And this is a good time to be thinking of certain people that we may not like. That's natural. But anyone on this path is called to love everybody unconditionally. And just as we find on the inside that fewer and fewer experiences retain the power to take us away from our innate peace, so we find that fewer and fewer people on the outside, fewer and fewer circumstances have the power to prevent us loving everybody unconditionally.
Could I just add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Swamiji. Go ahead.
Yes. One way of understanding enlightenment and this question about life post-enlightenment is that enlightenment has these two sides. One is what might be called a paradigm shift. I have now a tremendously different understanding and realization of who I am and what all this is. That this is one limitless existence, consciousness, bliss. That's the paradigm shift. Earlier, I thought I was this person, body, mind. But there is the other side of enlightenment, which might be called ethical manifestation. I mean, just to put it bluntly, if someone claims to be a Buddha, one would expect some Buddha-like qualities in that person. If, or, some saintly qualities in that person, to put it that way. Truth, self-control, compassion, selflessness, courage, freedom from personal gripes. Somebody put it beautifully that if you're enlightened, if you claim to be enlightened, beware, you give up all right to grumble. So those qualities, ethical manifestation. So paradigm shift and ethical manifestation. One would expect that. And one would expect it especially of oneself. Now, it's a good practice that the ethical manifestation one does, as a spiritual seeker, one does practice it quite prior, long time before the goal of enlightenment is approached or even reached. It's a good thing to practice that, and it's good to manifest it post-enlightenment. It's a good check, and it's a good result to expect. Inner fulfillment, transcendence of sorrow, unhappiness, transcendence of grumbling. That's for me personally, but also what Vivekananda called the manifestation of the divinity within. There's a poem which Vivekananda wrote. It really pertains to this metaphor of dream and awakening. He writes, "Be one with the truth. Let vision cease." By visions, he means dreams. Be one with the truth, let vision cease. Or if you cannot, dream but truer dreams, which are eternal love and service free. So that, I think, is wonderful advice. Whether I'm enlightened or not, let me try at least love and service. And if I think I'm enlightened, I should manifest that love and service.
Thank you both. There's a question that I think is worthy. It's for Swamiji, but I think it could be answered by both or either one. Is there any further to go when it's clearly seen that the final seer cannot be seen as an object, but only be known as oneself?
Certainly. When you put it that way, what happens is sometimes it might seem a very dissatisfactory way of putting it. The mind wants something to grasp. This is something real. I want to grasp this. Or a wonderful, clever philosophy is something real in my mind, a wonderful idea or an ideal which I can grasp. This self we are talking about, which knows but which cannot be known, which is the seer but cannot be seen, seems like an abstraction, seems like a kind of a cop-out. A lot was promised, not much was delivered. That's the problem of the mind, which demands an object to hold on to. Whereas from the witness perspective, that I am the witness of the mind, that's perfect. I it clearly it cannot be an object of the mind or of the senses, but it is always the witness of the mind. It does not make it any less real. It makes it even more real. And then comes, when I realize that, then comes, as Rupert has already pointed out, next, appreciate that witness. Yeah. Note, I cannot die if I am that witness. There's no more death for me. I am forever beyond darkness and sleep and ignorance because I'm the ever-shining consciousness. There is no more unhappiness or unfulfillment for me because I'm limitless. There is nothing in this universe which is actually, in a deep sense, not me. So when we appreciate that, that appreciation itself, it reveals itself for over a period of time. It takes some time to manifest itself. And then living like that, Rupert has mentioned this so beautifully, that living like that, it blossoms forth, it manifests over time. So all those things are there after you realize that I am the witness, never the witnessed. I am the real nature of the subject, and of course also the real nature of the object, but not an object. Yes.
Thank you. So I have another a question for both of you. Can we choose how we behave, or is everything that happens an act of God or universal consciousness?
Shall I
So,
respond? Bill, I would suggest both. Ultimately, everything is an act of universal consciousness, simply because that's all there really is. That there is nothing else present, or no one else present, to whom any action or thought could be attributed. So ultimately, yes, the one does everything. However, at a more relative level, I would, and this is a practical answer rather than a philosophical one, I would suggest that to the extent that we feel that we are an individual, a finite mind, we should behave as if we had free will. So ultimately, that the freedom is the freedom of the one. That the question, there is only the one. There's no question of, does the individual have free will? In reality, there are no individual finite beings or selves or objects. There is just the one. That one does everything. But at a relative level, at a practical, everyday level, we should behave as if we have free will. And what is the best use of our free will? One, to explore who we truly are, and two, to express, having recognized who we truly are, to express the implications of that recognition in our everyday life.
thank you. Swamiji, would you add to that before we go on?
And I would say what he said, but
Good.
I'll quote Vivekananda and the philosopher Arindam Chakravarti. Swami Vivekananda said, free will is a contradiction in terms. There is freedom. The one is free. So there is freedom, and you are that. But once it becomes will, it is within the chain of, it's determined. It's within the chain of cause and effect. It's within, which is in the realm of appearance. For practical purposes, as Rupert said, one must, and in fact, one doesn't have much of a choice there. You have no choice other than to be free. So, that sounds very contradictory. And the philosopher Arindam Chakravarti, in a beautiful article called "Why Pray to a God Who Can Hear the Anklets on an Ant's Feet?" Now, this is a quote from Sri Ramakrishna. He says, God hears everything. And imagine little children, girls especially in India, they have little anklets on their ankle, little bells, And so imagine if an ant, how tiny those anklets would be if you put anklets on an ant's feet. And God hears so well that God can hear the sound of the anklets on an ant's feet. But then the philosopher Arindam Chakravarti asks, why pray to such a God who can hear everything, who knows everything? And then he goes into an investigation of the question of free will. So he says there are three stages. One is stage one, it seems obvious we are free. Stage two, upon inquiry, philosophical inquiry, nowadays neuroscientific inquiry, and theological inquiry, we begin to see that we are not free. We cannot be. Free will is contradictory in this world, but there is causality. And then the third, so what? Ultimately, what do we do? What does it mean for all of us? The third stage is that we have this apparent free will. We cannot get over the freedom of the sense of having free will. And yet we begin to understand there cannot be ultimately any free will. So live in that knowledge, that liminal space of, it would practically mean being a spiritual seeker and continuously surrendering our so-called sense of free will. So three stages. Stage one, we feel we have free will. Stage two, there cannot be any free will upon investigation. Stage three, use this sense of free will to continuously acknowledge the one, the ultimate reality, where there is no free will at all. That is basically be a spiritual seeker practitioner.
Thank you. For those that are on the progressive spiritual path, whether it's Hindu, Buddhist, A Course in Miracles teaching, is it necessary to eventually let go of the progressive path completely to directly experience enlightenment or self-realization?
Should I go first?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Thank you.
I don't think it's necessary to let go of the practices, but one comes to an understanding that the practices themselves do not reveal our real nature, which is always self-revealed and ever shining. What the practices can do is remove the obstacles to realization. So in Vedanta, the practices ultimately lead to knowledge, self-knowledge, which removes the ignorance about ourself. And ourself is always shining forth. It does not make you into infinite consciousness, limitless being. We already are that. It's more like the sun is ever shining. A patch of dark cloud comes and appears to cover the sun, blocks our view. A gust of wind comes and blows away that patch of cloud. The sun is ever shining. Similarly, ignorance is like this dark cloud which seems to obscure our real nature, which is always shining. And all our practices ultimately culminate in self-knowledge, which is like the gust of wind which blows away the dark clouds of ignorance. And we realize we always wear this reality. But practices themselves, meditation, service, devotion, philosophical inquiry, all of those things, they first serve a purpose of orienting us and taking us to self-realization. Afterwards, many of those practices are retained as a way of manifesting that self-realization. So an enlightened being could very well meditate. An enlightened being could now study to teach, for example. Enlightened being could do all these spiritual practices which we as beginners or seekers do. I remember the story of this wonderful senior monk long before my time. He was regarded as an enlightened person who had the highest non-dual realization. And a novice monk one day saw him getting flowers from the garden for the shrine. It's something that the beginners, novices, we do. We clean the shrine, decorate it, and get gardens and get flowers and put incense and stuff like that. And to see this senior most among the monks and who is so highly regarded by everybody doing exactly what the novice is doing. So this novice, out of curiosity, goes and says, Swami, even now you are picking flowers in the garden for the shrine. You are a master of Vedanta. And the Swami, it seems, turned around to him with the sweetest of smiles and says, then would you please tell me what I should do? that just shows that from that person's perspective, when you realize what you truly are, every action shines in the light of that awareness. There is no action which is, more advanced spiritual practice and more initial or beginner. It's all very beautiful, all blazing with the light of that same realization.
Can I just add something?
Yes, please do.
Really, Bill, I just want to share my own experience in relation to this question about whether one should continue on a progressive path if one's on that path, for instance, practicing mantra meditation. I was on a progressive path, indeed practicing mantra meditation for 25 years, and I loved it. I was studying the classical Advaita tradition, practicing mantra meditation. It was a devotional path, really, and I loved it. I love it to this day. Still, sometimes now the mantra just comes up into my mind spontaneously because I repeated it for so long, and it always, whenever it does, it comes with it feels like a little blessing, and I just allow it to repeat itself a few times. But then there came a time after 24 years or so that I was beginning to feel that I had gone as far as I could go on that path. That's not a limitation of the path. It was a beautiful path, a complete path. But I had come to an end, and I really spontaneously, my life circumstances changed, and I embarked on the direct path, not in opposition to or instead of the progressive path, but just as in my case, as a natural evolution of it. I never had the feeling that I was stopping one path and starting another. The question just started spontaneously arising in me, but what is it that is aware of the sound of the mantra? And with that question, my attention was drawn away from the mantra, and my attention just began to sink inwards to its source, pure awareness. And that was really my practice for the next 15 years. And then after a while, that practice, I noticed it began to peter out, not because I decided, okay, now it's time to stop doing this and start doing something else. I just found that being aware was just my natural condition. There was no need either to investigate, there was no need either to give my attention to a mantra, nor was it necessary to investigate. I just found myself abiding in being, but both in periods of formal meditation and out and about in my everyday life. And but again, I didn't make a decision, okay, now it's time to stop the direct path and enter the pathless path. It was just in my case, a natural and inevitable extension of my previous practice. And I imagine that I'll spend the rest of my life on the pathless path, but who knows? I'm open to what may happen in the future. So, just to respond specifically to the question, if one is on a progressive path and one is happy on that path and it's effective, you're getting what you want from it, I would never dissuade someone from continuing on that path, or to feel that path is, for instance, inferior or lesser than any other path. So whatever path seems to you the easiest, most enjoyable, the most natural, that's the path you should be on.
Thank you. Very helpful answers, both of them. And I purposely waited to the end for this next question because I didn't want to get caught in this, in the idea of it. For an aspirant that's feeling, or a seeker, many around the world that are here and elsewhere are feeling anxious or fearful about the potential impact of the U.S. election on democracy and what practices and what's happening actually around the world with Israel and Ukraine, Russia. And just if you could answer for everyone, what practices or perspectives from Advaita or the non-dual teachings would you suggest to help to manage the emotions and stay grounded in our well-being? I'd like to have both of you answer that, please.
Should I go first?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I know this is the question. I'm here in New York right now, in the midst of all of that. But unfortunately, I don't have a very satisfactory answer. You see, I'm from India, and I begin to see that gives you naturally a perspective which may not be a very helpful perspective, but a kind of almost a view from eternity. Let me back up a little and share with you my experience of India and the West, especially America, especially New York. What I've seen in America and in New York is a kind of presentism, is living here right now. Whatever is happening right now in the news cycle on social media, that's reality. And we always have to react to that. Philosophies and spiritual teachings, no matter how ancient, have to say something about what's on Twitter or X right now. And from my perspective, the answer is why? Why do we have to respond to that? See, in India, there's a saying, Vivekananda quoted it, 1,000 years of city, 1,000 years of forest. Not that things cannot get bad. They can get pretty bad, but they can also get better. And 1,000 years of city, 1,000 years of forest, that's the kind of perspective that Vedanta takes on this, a kind of eternal perspective. If it's true that you are Brahman, pure consciousness, you have seen the rising and falling of universes, not just cities or nation states or worlds. You're perfectly all right. Yes, things can get tough for a while, things can get better. Now, it's not that this is a good attitude. In India, I've seen the problem is, now I understand from this perspective, which I've got from the West, from America, is this unwillingness to respond to real problems from the religious perspective, from the spiritual perspective, because it's a very eternalist perspective. And therefore, what's happening right now is a minor passing phase, not to be really bothered about. And that can lead to accumulation of all sorts of huge societal problems: discrimination, casteism, poverty, malnourishment, starvation, a colonized nation. And you are sitting in your eternal high throne. So that can be a very serious problem of not being willing to respond to actual serious concerns in society. And this can be another problem, which I see right here in Manhattan, of being a live wire, of trying to respond and set everything right, or develop a new spiritual perspective or philosophy for the latest political, social, or entertainment trend on social media. That's it.
Rupert.
Our world culture is founded on, our current world culture is founded on a paradigm of separation. And we see this being played out in extreme ways in various parts of the world now. So as truth lovers, our sacred duty is not in any way to further this paradigm, but to live a paradigm of unity. And this means seeing everybody, and that means everybody, not just the people we like, and not just the people we agree with, but seeing everybody as our very own self, the one infinite being whose nature is peace and love. Now, if we cannot do that as so-called spiritual practitioners, we cannot expect anybody else to do that. So it is for us, each of us, in this particular moment, to ensure that whether we disagree with people's policies, and of course it is appropriate to disagree with policies, to debate ideas and so on, but underneath all that, the most important thing is to feel, not just understand, but to feel that we love everybody, that we share our being with everybody. If we cannot do that as so-called spiritual practitioners, we cannot expect our world leaders to come anywhere near that possibility. And as a practical exercise to do this, I recommend, and this is something I do myself, that you take in your mind an image of someone you're very close to, a companion, a child, a dear friend, and you hold their image up in your mind, and you feel the depth of love you share. In other words, you feel that their being is your being, the one infinite being. That's easy to do. We already love them. And then to bring up a second image in your mind alongside the image of your companion, the image of a stranger, someone you don't know, someone you meet at the supermarket checkout, or a cab driver that gives you a lift, or someone you meet on the street. You hold an image of a stranger in your mind, and you look at them, you look at this image, and you go back and forth between the image of your companion and the image of this stranger until you don't just understand, but you feel that you love the stranger with the same depth of love that you love your companion. And then you take a third image, the image of someone that you actively dislike. Take someone, could be someone in real life that you dislike, that you have a conflict with, or take someone from the news, an international politician, someone that you really, really dislike, and you look at their image, and you go back and forth between their image and the other two images until you not only understand that you share your being with them, but you feel it. Until you can honestly say that you can look at these three people and feel the same depth of love. This doesn't mean that you have to agree with them all. That's agreeing and disagreeing is about the mind. Love has nothing to do with the mind. It is just this recognition that below the mind, behind the mind, we share our being. And I would suggest that this is an extremely powerful practice in the Tibetan tradition. Advanced practitioners are given extremely demanding, unpleasant practices such as eating rotting fish. The purpose of this is for you to face the experience that you find the most distasteful and find inner peace in the face of the intensity of that experience. Well, for some of us, holding up a character of someone, maybe from the news, that we dislike intensely is even more, and loving them unconditionally, that is even more demanding, more difficult than eating rotting fish. It is a kind of contemporary version of the same practice. It's tremendously powerful. And I would suggest in the long term, it is this this recognition of our shared being must be humanity's only hope. That a society that is founded on any other understanding other than the understanding that we share our being is a society, a civilization that is not sustainable, that cannot prevail. And I feel that it is incumbent on all of us, it is our sacred duty, at this time perhaps more than ever, to stand as this impersonal, impartial love towards everyone. And I think that's enough, and I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Thank you, Rupert, for that practice. Very useful and practical. And Swamiji, do you have anything to add to that, or we have a final question in about 5 minutes left?
Yes, I think it's a beautiful way to end with what Rupert said. This is really the manifestation of the divinity within us, this recognition of the oneness of all existence, and as love for all beings. Swami Vivekananda said that the test of truth is oneness. That which unites is more likely to be true than that which divides. Another test of truth is strength. He said, reject whatever weakens you physically, emotionally, intellectually, morally, spiritually. Reject it as poison. And strength is the test of truth. Truth gives you strength. And another test of truth, he said, that which makes us selfless is likely to be true. That which makes us more selfish is more likely to be untrue.
Wow. This has been a phenomenal session with the two of you, and thank you for sharing your clarity and your wisdom with all of us. And it's amazing. And just want to say that you two are just really have been such a support for everything that we do here at Pure Presence Conferences and the Center for Awakening. Both Rupert and Swami G, thank you both for being part of Awakening Mind Films. We're going to be interviewing Swami G on Monday. Looking forward to that. And Rupert Spira, you're just a great support for everything we do. We really appreciate it. And for our audience, we have another session in 30 minutes at 12 Eastern with Dan Schmidt. It's a 5-hour session. So get something to eat and refresh yourself, go to the bathroom, whatever. Thank you both for being here and everyone for being part of this conference. And we'll see you soon. See you, Swami G, on Monday. We'll see you, the audience, in 30 minutes. Rupert, I'll see you when I see you. Love you all.
Thank you, Bill. It's a pleasure to be a part of the beautiful work you do. And thank you, Swami G. It's lovely to be with you again. And thank you, all your attendees. And thank you, Bill.
Thank you, and namaskars.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.